Warning, this podcast typically features spoilers and strong opinions. Proceed with caution. Hello, and welcome back to Then a Moment, the podcast where two lifelong storytellers talk about storytelling. I'm Pavi Proczko, audiobook narrator, author, singer, actor, etc.
And I am Colin Funk. What do I say here? Oh, shit. What do I say?
You're a childhood development expert?
Oh, I know what I am.
Keep it. We're keeping it.
I hate you. And I am Colin Funk, a childhood development expert and a teaching artist.
And today we have a special guest.
Joe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, I am Joe. I work in tech, and I am also a theater advocate and very passionate about the arts.
Yeah.
And that's great, because today we're going to be talking about Hadestown. Woo! The musical with music by Anais Mitchell.
Yes.
But first, we're going to do our moments of the week.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right.
You go.
Okay, I'll go first. So this week, we've been kind of catching up on the other two.
Mm-hmm.
And that show, I was nervous that it was canceled because it was like not happening during the pandemic. Do you watch the other two?
No, I know nothing about it.
Oh my
fantastic.
gosh. It is amazing. It is these two siblings, this like gay actor, and the other one was a dancer, but now she wants to be a manager. But their younger brother ends up becoming this like young Justin Bieber style internet famous pop star and rises to fame. And they're kind of like, they're on the outskirts of the fame.
They're like riding his coattails.
But it's like so funny.
It's absurd.
And the episodes keep getting more absurd. Do you ever watch Community?
No, I have not watched that either.
Oh my gosh.
Another one. But the thing of that Community did was like they would change like each episode would be like a completely different genre of film style. And they do that like a little bit in the other two. And it is so, I mean, it's crazy and it's ridiculous. And it's totally extreme. And this week there was an episode where the main guy is like gay actor trying to make it in Hollywood, and he's dating this method actor who is always in character to whatever role he's playing, and he's trying to convince his boyfriend's agent to get him a role where he'd be like super horny because his boyfriend won't have sex with him because of the roles he keeps getting in. It's so stupid. But like currently the boyfriend's in a like an AIDS play. It's literally the play that he goes to is called, what is it called? It's like 8 Gay Men with AIDS, a poem in many hours.
It's so
and it's
funny.
like, and like the way they treat it, they're walking up in line, and one of the ushers is like welcoming this woman in, and she's like, "I'm so excited," and he's like, "Welcome to 8 Gay Men with AIDS, a poem in many hours." She goes, "Exactly how many hours is it?" And he goes, "Why?" She goes, "Oh, never mind. This is important, and I will stay as long as I need to." And then it ends up being like this, like 3-4 day like event where people like are bringing their computers and like they're sleeping through it, but they have to be there. It's so ridiculous.
This is your
so
job
stupid.
now.
This is your job now. It is so stupid. But just like, especially that line, the play in many hours, which already made me laugh, like that, like 8 Gay Men with AIDS, a play in many hours. I'm like, yes, there's so many of them. Like, it's just like, it takes these things that are like, this is how gay men have to play gay men with trauma and all this like drama to be taken seriously in the acting world. And it's like making fun of that in a very ridiculous way. And that, like, that woman is just like called out and it's like, Oh no, we'll be here. It's important. Even though this is,
I'll be
really
here as
a miserable
long as
experience.
they need me to.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
very funny.
It's so
It's
funny.
my moment. Yeah.
Fantastic. My moment is also from the other two.
I thought it might be. It's so good.
And for me, it's with the boyfriend who's like method acting the whole time, and he always is doing these roles where he's like closeted, or he like has some disease that they don't know about because now it's like 1981 where he is in his method. They don't know what it is.
But it is.
The main guy, Carrie, is like, we do know what it is. It's HIV, and also you don't have it. It's so funny, and at the end, he's like gonna break up and. He gets up to leave just as someone arrives with a delivery. It's like a congratulations from Deborah Messing.
Oh, that's right. I forgot
and
it was
it's
Deborah Messing.
congratulations on your Tony nomination. And it's like this really egotistical kind of hubris and wanting to ride in everyone's coattails is what these two siblings always do. The other two always do it. That's their whole thing. And so he decides to stay at the last minute because of this nomination. But it's when he looks back, he's like, did you get nominated for like a full Tony? And the actor, the boyfriend just is like, he's drinking this like hot soup or something. He's like having tea because he's so sick. And he just smiles, this like knowing smile, like it's this little smirk. And it was so perfect. It was like a moment of like that character like breaking through the method acting. It was really good. I was like, it's that one moment of like, oh, a glimmer of who that real person is. It was so good. I loved it. Good moment.
Recommend.
How about you, Joe?
So I've been catching up on The Great. Have you
I've
not watched it.
I mean, fantastic. The writing, the costuming, the cinematography. It's so funny and so witty, and it's just brilliant. But it's called The Great, an occasionally true story, and it's about Catherine the Great and her overthrowing Peter and coming to power. So there's this moment in the most recent season, and I'll try to say it without giving spoilers for the audience. But
we actually were pro spoilers, so go for it.
Because we're about to like just
we're about to spoil everything.
Okay,
they are warned before.
So The Great season 3, spoiler warning right now.
Yes.
So in season 3, Catherine the Great, Peter dies because essentially she overthrows him, and then they kind of actually fall in love.
I didn't get to that part in history yet.
It's an occasionally true story, so probably didn't happen. Anyway, he dies, and it's kind of her going mad and her like losing her grips on reality and on what it means to be empress and what it means to be Russia. And she kind of has this moment where essentially her mother-in-law like snaps her out of it and says, if you don't do your job, I will be empress of Russia. Like, remember why you did this. Remember why I backed you. And it's kind of this moment that snaps her back to reality.
Whoa. Okay.
And also it's Elle Fanning, and she's just fabulous.
Insane.
But
she's
like
so good.
taking through this multi-arc episode of her falling into madness and then realizing, no, I am Catherine the Great of Russia, and this is what I set out to do. And her grappling with her love of this country that she kind of was brought to and now took over, but also her mourning the loss of her love, essentially.
It's complex,
even though she probably didn't love him in real life. But in The Great and occasionally true story,
it's
she
fiction,
did.
you know.
So that's my moment.
Wow.
Very cool.
That's so interesting. I got to take a look at that. All right. Are we ready?
Yeah,
Let's dive into Hadestown.
Yeah. Would you give us a
Way down
little synopsis?
Way down in Hadestown. Yes. Okay. So this is a modern-ish retelling of the Orpheus and Eurydice myth with kind of New Orleans jazz folk music. So Orpheus is a poet, a son of a muse, one of the goddesses of the arts, and a nymph named Eurydice, and he fall in love. And meanwhile, Hades, the god of the underworld, and Persephone, his wife, the goddess of the spring, are in their like cyclical marital conflict, and it causes this long winter. So Orpheus is searching for the magic song to bring spring back, and Eurydice dies, and Hades claims her for his industrial underworld. Hermes leads Orpheus to the underworld to get her back. He journeys there, and when he confronts Hades, he sings the song of spring and to let Eurydice, to convince him to allow Eurydice to leave with him. Hades says, fine, that's great, you can take her. I'm convinced. I love Persephone again. However, I can't look weak in front of everyone, so you can't look at her as she follows you out. You just have to trust that she's behind you. And so they make it almost the whole way. But at the last moment, Orpheus gives in to his doubt, turns around, sees her, and he loses her forever to Hades. The end. Very sad. Like the original Romeo and Juliet tragedy.
Yeah.
It is my favorite Greek myth.
Now,
Also,
speaking of which,
incidentally.
how much do you know about this specific show before going in?
I knew, of course, the Orpheus Eurydice myth. I was very interested in that. I'd seen a bunch of different adaptations of it in opera and film. And I had seen Anais Mitchell in concert at Space up in Evanston once, and she did a whole set from the show. I'd seen the Tony performance too. So I knew some of the music a little bit, kind of the vibe of what it was. But that was, I didn't really know how they did it, like what it really was.
Right.
Which we'll come to because it ended up being a bit of a surprise to me later on. Yeah.
What about you, Joe, before you saw it?
So I have the exact opposite experience of Pavi, where I do not like this myth. I do not like this tragedy. I have seen it as an opera, as a ballet, as a play, and now it is a musical. And it just, to me, always feels like lacking. Like, it's so simple. Just don't look. Right. So I don't know. I like other tragedies more. Totally. And this one to me just always feels overly simple and drawn out in every production that I've seen, which we'll get into more details. In terms of this particular production, whenever something has a lot of hype around it, Tony Awards, et cetera, I try very hard not to listen to the music. I didn't listen to the music from Hamilton for 3 years. Like,
good for you.
Somehow I managed. But because I like to be surprised. I want to experience it.
I agree. Yeah.
For the first time.
Yeah.
I want to have that surprise, that intrigue, and I don't want the plot to be spoiled by the music.
Right.
Yeah.
I tend to do the same thing. For Hamilton, people kept telling me that I had to.
No.
And I was mad because like I listened to it and I was like, I didn't have to.
No.
And I saw it, I was like, there's no way I had to. Because that's generally my
because then I'll go and I'll listen to the soundtrack over and over again and dissect it and listen to parts that I didn't hear about after, or maybe I'll see the show a second time, right? Because there's always going to be things that you don't get, but I like
that's
that.
The magic of live theater.
Yeah.
I think
there's something.
I think there's something more magical with live theater going into it kind of as cold as you can.
Exactly.
But this is a show that obviously like even, it's a pretty popular myth. Even if you don't know it, there are so many adaptations of it that we don't even realize are adaptations of Orpheus and Eurydice. It's one of like the classic structures that like gets repeated over and over again.
Right. Yeah. Like we know Moulin Rouge is just Orpheus.
Because it's also La Boheme, isn't?
Yeah, La Boheme. Yeah. La Boheme would be really similar.
Moulin Rouge is La Boheme, which is also
like Rent is also that, and it's like that descent into hell, and then someone is brought back. And even Romeo and Juliet is kind of like a variation on that. And,
Romeo and Juliet.
Because there's these other features of it that are like that fated to be apart and trying to claim each other, reaching through the darkness and never getting it. And
I guess part of I wasn't as familiar with the Hades and Persephone piece of it. Like that wasn't I don't really remember that mythology around those. I don't know. So that one, I was like, I don't know how much of this is like from the myth and how much of it, because it's like they're intertwined, and I know there's like 100 different versions of all of these that are Greek and Roman and even like many variations within there. So I don't know how much the story is actually intertwined or if they're used as like foils and parallels to each other.
I think they took some liberties with the original Greek and Roman myths from talking to a friend that's really into these things. There's some different ideas around Persephone and Hades like, I think one is that, like, didn't he kidnap her in one of the...
Yeah, that he's like, that
Yeah,
she's
for sure.
kidnapped and because she ate the pomegranate, and so it's like, well, now you're trapped with me, and so then he like deigns to let her go half a year away. But I have heard or read the myth before where Persephone is a player in it, and Hades, of course, is in this myth where it's
Right.
Persephone basically convinces. She's like, hey, you got to do this, husband. You got to like make it happen. And Hades is like, fine, I'll let him go. That's fine. And so they are involved, but it's they really, in this musical, they really did like tie those two stories together a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So overall, how did we like it?
I did overall, I think. Again, I do.
Ooh, rousing.
I know. I do like the Orpheus and Eurydice myth as described. I think it's really like poignant and poetic and tragic, and especially how there are features of this show I thought that worked really, really well to make me overall like the whole thing. Things
Tipping
like
the scale,
tips the scale, because there were some things where I was like, I don't know, that needs to happen. But overall, the kind of the big picture elements where it was some of the stagecraft, like the fates are like the best part of the show, where there's like three women like singing in 3-part harmony all over the stage, and they're like everything you need them to be at any moment. And they sound so good, and their music is the best music in the show. I loved Hermes as
like a narrator.
As a narrator,
I thought that was
and
excellent,
it's such a good idea. And then just the cyclical nature of the story. And I want to dive a little bit into that maybe in a bit, because we talk about it a little bit in our West Side Story episode.
So it's interesting. I mean, like, even these elements that you're listing now are elements that I feel kind of work in other either forms of this story or just in other stories in general. Like Hermes as a narrator is certainly not the first time I've seen.
No, it's not new. And just as a messenger.
Right. Yeah. He's a messenger, so he's telling us a story. It makes sense.
Yeah.
It like really reads true. Using the fates as this like pseudo Greek chorus, but also like they function as part of the world, because that makes sense with the way they it's like, you know, I've seen it before. It's I mean, they use it's Macbeth. It's
right. Yeah, very much. It's the muses from Hercules,
absolutely,
to be even more paralleled. But yeah, it's having that convention. These are things that like are tried and true. They
the
work.
Urchins in Little Shop.
Yes.
Like they do it all the time still. Like it is still very common to like use that. And it's like very effective almost every time. Like I think Little Shop is amazing. And then so those are elements that like really do work, and they
and that cyclical nature that it has, because at the end, the very last moment, like the last scene after he sees Eurydice and loses her forever, they basically start the whole story over again. And you know, throughout the whole thing, Hermes has lyrics talking about how, you know, we know what the story is, and we know that we're going to, you know, where it goes, but maybe this time it's going to be different. That's why we retell the story. We're telling it again and again and again, because we want to have this experience. And we talk about this a little in the West Side Story again, because of that. What makes this story that we know is going to end tragically repeatable and watchable, and why do I forget, and why do I want to watch it again?
Yes, that comes up a lot on this podcast.
It does come up a lot on the podcast, and it's explicitly talked about in the musical.
Yes, I mean,
and they do it at the end, and I just have memories of watching Moulin Rouge back in the day and having it. I might have mentioned on this other podcast too, but having to like start the DVD over again at the end because I want it to happen again. I didn't want it to be over. So I'm like going back to the beginning of the DVD, and they literally do that as part of the story. And it all kind of like clicked in my mind, where it's like the cyclical nature of seasons. You've got Hades and Persephone in this cyclical marital thing that mirrors the seasons, and then you also have them foiling Orpheus and Eurydice, who also have a cyclical thing where it happens over and over again. It's like it's the one thing that like in some way every person is going to have to experience, kind of that losing something and wanting to grab it, and destiny not being able to do it. You will never get out. You don't get out alive you know?
Right. It taps into like a real human experience of these cycles in life. It just, that's how we feel life. It feels cyclical.
And the hope that comes with it. Because even though we know no one gets out of this alive. I'm sorry if I ruined it for you. Spoilers. You don't get out alive. And still...
Of life?
Yes.
Spoilers for life?
Yes,
oh my
spoilers
God.
for life. You won't get out
So
alive.
dumb.
Sorry. But even so, we still find hope. We still find those small moments. We still will do it again.
Right.
Very Futurama.
So, what? I'm curious. I didn't talk so much about what I knew coming into it, and like a lot of what I knew about the musical specifically. Joe had seen it before me and was talking to me, so I got a lot of recounts of the show, and especially some of the technical elements. And so like that was part of what like I went into that experience with, which that's always fun because like that's not, I'm always going to analyze that. It's like, it feels very separate from spoilers to me. And maybe other people wouldn't feel the same way, but I'm curious, Joe, what your overall opinion of the show is.
Once again, I feel like quite the contrarian because I feel the exact opposite way of Pavi. I walked out of that show like just being not happy. It's not the worst show I've ever seen because that would probably go to Something Rotten, which I know those theater nerds will also attack me. We could spend a whole nother hour about my feelings about that particular show.
Sure.
But anyway, I actually softened to the show more the more I listened to the soundtrack. Okay. And I will argue that the soundtrack is the redeeming quality of that show. I just felt I felt pulled out of it more than I felt pulled into it time and time again. And I don't know when we want to get into some of the technical elements because those are certainly what pulled me out. But I felt the costumes weren't great and felt cheap. And we even talked about like Persephone's handbag felt like you got it at the Dollar Tree. Like, and they're gods. Like they should feel like Once on This Island, right? Where they're like big, even if it's things that are found or whatever, right? They should,
it's like Once on This
Island. I wanted
it
to feel more.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to like really juxtapose with Orpheus, right? Like they're starving, they're artists, they're creators trying to hope for spring again. And really, if you put the whole cast on stage and closed your eye, like, you know, you wouldn't know who is Persephone, who's Hades, maybe Hades because he's in a suit, but
sure.
I felt like the costumes blended too much.
There certainly were distinguishing elements, but I agree with you that there wasn't really, like they didn't look distinguishable at first glance. Yeah. You could pick them out and be like, yeah, we're looking at like muted neutrals for everyone, and the gods are a little bit less muted and not as neutral in color, but still like very much in the same time period and not like that elevated in general.
Yeah, and it was like that 1920s kind of New Orleans vibe, and you can definitely show different like class structures through the costumes as well, right? So I didn't get that as much. I felt the costuming wasn't as strong as it could have been. And then I have a lot of opinions on the lighting.
Yes. Oh my God, I can't. I definitely want to talk about that. And I think but I think this show is really interesting because like it feels like pretty in the middle for me. Like it's not a perfect show, but it's not a terrible show. It's like there's so many good qualities of it, but there's so much to talk about that I feel could be better.
Yeah.
Like that's because I'm a big fan of folk music, jazz music, and like I saw Anais Mitchell twice, and in concert at Space because I was working there at the time. And excellent music. Some of it doesn't. I mean, in general, in musicals, I'm like, I don't know if there needs to be more cuts. Always needs to be more cuts than they have.
Yep. It could have been a 90-minute show.
Oh yes,
I would have loved that. Especially that Myth would work so well as a 90-minute show.
Yeah, don't make me take a break. And there's 20-minute intermission too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, don't make me do that.
Like that. That would feel so.
It would be so like it'd have the momentum that would really like push it.
I think
and every time I see that show, I think that's my issue with it. They draw it out too much.
They do.
For sure.
Like the ballet was like 3 hours. We don't need a 3-hour ballet. There's not even words. Like we don't need a 3-hour ballet.
I'm literally like, what? Which part was the ballet? I
Yeah.
don't remember.
No, the Joffrey did it years ago.
Oh my gosh.
The actual ballet?
No. Sorry.
Yeah, Orpheus and Eurydice,
you know,
the ballet.
Part of me felt like this was kind of almost like cut for theaters to do it, community theaters and high school theaters. Like it almost seemed like, great, it'll run its course on Broadway and then it'll be picked up by that track.
Interesting.
I mean, it's just like Metamorphosis.
Yeah.
Mary Zimmerman. I'm like, it was on Broadway, and then every high school in the country was like, we're doing it.
Yeah.
Without a pool, because we can't do it with a pool. But some of them tried similar
It's
things.
also so weird to see a show and like myself have really negative opinions and everyone I talk to be obsessed with the show. It kind of like leaves you feeling like, did I miss something? Like everything on the internet, everyone I talked to was just upset. And I was like, I'm missing something. I see a lot of theater and this just wasn't it for me.
And that's I think that's part of what's really interesting. Like it gets a lot of hype, and that's why it's not like it is. There's so many things that are very appealing about the show, but that does not mean, and it's like, and it leads some people to be like, that's the best show. That's the best. Like enough of the show is good enough to get people there. But it's not in a place, I think it's so interesting. Like, it's not in a place where it's so divisive, where it's like, I love it, I hate it. You know, it's not like.
Yeah.
I mean, for you or for.
No, I just
in general.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like
pretty
most
middling.
people are. Yeah, it's middling, but it's still like.
But it's overwhelmingly positive. I feel like people have overwhelmingly
I think so
positive
too. And
perceptions of it.
Yes. And I think part of that is. See, some of that I think is there's I don't know, it's unoffensive generally. Like it's like it's it ticks a lot of boxes that are today. It's very
and the music
folky.
is so good.
It's like up from the ground up, and the music is beautiful, and it's very in the zeitgeist. So it will be. It's not unlike why Hamilton might have had as big of a hype as it did when it came out. It was like it came at the right time. I would argue there are better things. Even that year, maybe.
I mean, I think
In
the Heights is
In the Heights. I like In the Heights better than
I like Hamilton, but
I like
it's not
Waitress better than Hamilton. You know,
them all better than Hadestown.
Well, yes, but and I did too, and I think it's interesting too because you mention all of the things that you mentioned about having a problem with. I also have a problem with those things, and it's like my love of the actual story tends to like the base story, and this is the interesting thing is that I love the Orpheus and Eurydice myth and the things that they got right so much about it that I was like, the costumes aren't great. I think some of the songs could have got cut. I don't know what the chorus is doing. They could have just been just the fates, and I would have been happy. We didn't need the rest of the humans on there for everything. I don't even know what they're doing. I don't get it.
Yeah, and I think I came with the opposite. Is I wanted them to like make me love this story
elevate
that
it.
I didn't really like.
And for me, the story actually elevates everything that was happening because I love Orpheus and Eurydice already.
Well, and I think they tried to make like those four characters, Orpheus, Eurydice, Hades, and Persephone, each like equal main characters. At least that's what that's always what they're telling me when they give them equal bows at the end. That's what they're like communicating.
Yeah, they did.
Me.
They had equal bows. Yeah.
But what's interesting is I think they also made it equally about Hades and Persephone's love story, if not more so. I mean, there was I was talking with another friend about this because the intermission song is Build the Wall, which is essentially about Hades keeping Persephone. It centers this whole story around their love story rather than the intermission song, which should arguably be Wait For Me. It's the best number in the entire production, the best lighting design, the only good lighting design from the production. And by not having that be the intermission song, it recenters the love story.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, that's
interesting.
What I mean.
I thought that was curious.
They're really trying. They're trying to make it, and I just feel like because the big moment is the turnaround at the end, it will always be the big gasp moment that has nothing to do with Hades and Persephone. It will never feel like their story.
There were people that literally gasped in the theater, and I was like, have you not read a book?
Colin did too.
I did.
Colin gasped.
I did.
It surprises me every time. I do
No,
like
wanted
it.
to gasp.
I do like it. I love it. I'm just like,
No,
oh my God,
I'm
when
that
is it going to
kind
happen?
of-
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Maybe it
like,
won't
can
this
she
time.
just die already?
Oh God, I love it.
But that's also like when I see La Boheme as Broadway or as an opera, and she sings for 20 minutes about how she's about to die. I'm like, just die.
Oh, but
We know
I
it's
love
coming.
it.
Moulin
Just
Rouge
do
does
it.
it.
Moulin Rouge
Yeah, but
does
Moulin
it.
Rouge does it well. And
best.
They
That's
do.
what I mean.
Yeah,
Yes,
they
they
do
like you
really
mentioned
well.
replaying Moulin Rouge when it ended. That I would absolutely do
Yeah.
because it's a perfect.
And that's the thing. It's like,
It is so
you know,
good. I mean, after watching the musical,
oh my God.
I think it's like,
Garbage.
oh my gosh,
Garbage.
this is so funny. Like we talked about it like right after, or I think it was intermission that we were like, Pavi turns to me and goes, do you think this is a better retelling of Moulin Rouge than Moulin Rouge was? And I'm like, I looked down at my notes and I was like, and I pointed and it literally was better Moulin Rouge than Moulin Rouge. It was like, I'm like, that's the stupidest thing that's ever.
That's so funny.
I'm like, we
Oh
were
my
so
God.
dumb. But I hated the Moulin Rouge musical.
Yeah.
Because the movie is brilliant.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Hadestown, I would have accepted Hadestown as a better reimagining of Moulin Rouge than the Moulin Rouge musical.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
for
because
sure.
I just really hated the Moulin Rouge.
Yeah.
musical.
Yeah, and you know, we are better, I think, probably these days at storytelling than like the ancient Greeks were. So, you know, we know how
have
to
a different
pace
sensibility at
stuff.
the very
Right,
least.
we
Yeah.
do for sure. So like we know how to pace things for our culture, and so like Moulin Rouge is just gonna be better. We have the technology, you know,
so
to
should
make this
Hadestown
happen.
should be able to do the same thing.
But
It should be able to
absolutely, they
take the-
should. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
except-
thought in a lot of ways they did, but it was I don't remember what I was going to say.
Joe, what were you going to say?
What were you going to say?
I mean, the thing that I haven't talked about yet is the lighting
I
design.
was
Yes,
about to
please.
say,
Let's
like,
do
I
it.
want to like
Let's
dive
do
into
it.
like the tech because I think that's like a big part of it for me. So
It pulled me out. I mean, right off the bat, the thing that I think upset me the most was the use of warm whites and cold whites. And they had this really kind of natural, like tungsten warm vibe going on, which I was all about. To have that be your whole lighting. But then all of a sudden there'd be like uplights that went into the audience that were just like the like bright, like headlight white.
Yeah.
And the contrast just didn't make any sense
it felt
to me.
really arbitrary for sure.
Like if you're gonna make the stage feel icy because the land is barren, then okay, use. But then like I just don't understand those two lighting tones being contrasted so heavily.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree because like, and there are clear points at which like first act essentially is all above ground and second act is essentially all underworld. There's some,
And if you transition to like, okay, it's winter above, so we're going to use like cooler lighting, and then we're going to go down into hell and it's warmer lighting, but they were using them at the same time.
Yeah.
Like lights shining at me being both warm and cold.
exactly.
And that was
Very
what was
confusing.
so jarring for me.
'Cause
And
it
like,
didn't make sense.
It
Like,
didn't, yeah.
it didn't, because like, again, there can be reasons for all of this, but it did not, I agree that it did not read specifically like it meant anything.
Yeah.
Well, and the primary use for lights, I think, is one to focus us as an audience, but two, it is a prominent feature of the geography that they're trying to represent, right? So it's
Yeah.
not just sets where you're also using the lights to represent time and place. And if you're not consistent with it, then you kind of don't know where you are. And that's why, again, it's like kind of the best lighting part is the wait for me, because I actually did.
yeah.
It felt like we were somewhere.
Yes.
It felt like there was, this is actually specific to here. And everything else was like, wait, there's like the lights are very like Hades. It's very like industrial. And they're like these like spots where they're, you're in a mine, but they're
Yeah.
doing it even when we're above ground, weirdly, because we see Hades. So it's like, it was a little bit too much trying to mix everything together all the time. And so now I have no sense of where I am.
And there's shows that like I think we were even talking about this, like Spring Awakening does such a good job.
Oh my gosh, Spring Awakening is
at
perfection.
defining space with lighting,
Yeah.
with very little, like right there can make a classroom or whatever just by putting a box on the floor. So like there's a show that does it exceptionally well.
Right.
And then you go to
Pared down and just uses the lighting really smart.
To-
It's so
yeah.
smart and it was so
and that's
good.
what I wanted out of Hadestown. I wanted it to be smart, and instead it felt sloppy, and it pulled me out of it.
Yeah.
Except for Wait for Me.
Right.
Wait for Me was the one moment, and then we'll talk about my least favorite moment.
Oh my God. I think it was everyone's least favorite moment.
I laughed in
I
the
hope
theater.
so. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's all of us here in the room.
But wait for me. I mean, just the way that these pendulums come down and they like are almost a character themselves, and the fog on the screen and the stage parting at the end of that, like it just that's what I wanted from the show.
It's intentional at that point. And it did win the Tony for lighting design.
Weird.
Because
That's just for that.
And I do
I mean, it was COVID. What else was running?
I mean, that's
Right.
true, but
I think that's why it won a lot of the Tonys it did.
Yeah.
that's fair. That
Unpopular
is-
opinion.
I mean, the Tony Awards during COVID were.
That was a crazy thing.
Because also Moulin Rouge did.
Moulin Rouge, was it the year before?
No, I think it was the same year, wasn't it?
Was it the same year?
Or was it the
Might
year
have
after?
been the same year.
Interesting.
Moulin Rouge.
One like
No, because they
Moulin Rouge like
It must
took
be-
everything.
Hadestown won.
Hades swept like
They got,
So it
they
must
had
have been the
eight-
next
eight
year.
It must have been the
Tonys.
next year
because
yeah.
like Moulin Rouge was the only one up for Tonys the year that
Yeah.
it
It
won,
was, like,
and so they were like, "We're just going to
just-
take it because we
Yeah.
don't think we're going to win against anybody else."
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I think
so.
that's the only reason those two shows won as much as they
I
did.
absolutely agree.
I mean,
gosh, we're
music.
we're hanging on them
I know,
so
we really
much
are
this
ragging on
time.
them,
No,
but-
it's-
Hadestown should have won for music. Like, music is beautiful. The
I
score
loved
is
it. Yes,
beautiful.
the score
like,
is great.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else. And there are moments in Hadestown that uses lighting in a, like, people talk about that scene like that.
Yeah.
Like that is something that is, lighting is one of the arts that, like, if it happens well, people don't notice it. People don't,
I think if they would have just pared down the lighting and only done the like really special thing for Wait For Me, I would have been happy with it.
Oh, I
right?
agree.
They
Yeah.
tried to do I think
much.
to your point, they just
Yeah.
tried to do too much with it.
I think they did that with all of the tech.
Yeah.
Like, I think like except for the costumes, maybe.
But they didn't do quite enough. Yeah.
Like, but everything felt a little, for me, lighting included, like a little Disneyfied. Like they were like everything was a little too polished. The like underground outfits were like a Disney version of like a steampunk underground industrial. Like they're like not quite pared down enough, but not quite like real enough. They were like this weird in between thing that feels like that weird Disney theme park. This is what the people walking around the park, they're not really that dirty, and they like have like vague costumes that are well made.
Yeah, but if it was Disney, it would be done well.
Yeah. Well, they'd have more money.
But I think about like, I'm just ragging on everything today.
I know.
But like the live action Mulan movie
Okay.
Oh my God.
but like that costuming, everyone's like super clean, and I'm like, why is everything?
I mean, okay, there could be a whole nother session just about that movie in
Absolutely.
particular.
Yeah. Oh my
Also-
God. I don't know if I want to spend the time on that.
Yeah.
Also, Anastasia, the Disney musical.
Yeah, the Disney musical
It
Anastasia.
was Disney.
Yeah, it was.
that did the musical.
Right.
But I heard that show was good, no?
No,
Okay, I've heard good things, but I didn't see it.
I didn't. I didn't.
We are mean today.
We are mean today. Usually we're.
I did want to mention one, like this is related, I think. Oh, well, we'll see. A problem with doing too much.
Yeah.
And
And everyone at
this
this
might
table
be-
likes to do a lot. So
we do like to do too much.
Yes.
We all do too much. But
Oh my gosh.
trying to do too much with the
Look at
show.
our outfits. Look at our hair.
I know, for real. We have to remember to take a picture, by the way. We have to take a
yeah.
picture. Okay. That's all I'm going to do.
Right
Put a
now?
pin in that. Yeah, right now. Ding. Okay. The Persephone and Hades love story bit. Backtracking a little bit, but this is also doing a little bit too much, and why it's a little bit unclear. Something that I've been studying a little bit in my schooling about like arch plots and mini plots. As it's kind of jargony, but basically most stories that we watch and read, they're just an arch plot where you're basically following one person's journey, and there might be other people that have kind of their own small journeys that are doing things, right? Yeah. And they do things and they're related, but they're all basically in contrast.
There's like a main story,
a
and
main
side-
story,
side
and side
plots.
stories that right. We all know those stories.
Yeah.
There's mini plots where there is a theme generally that the story is talking about,
Right.
but we're not following just one person, and all of these kind of smaller stories are loosely connected, even if it is like one long narrative.
Even if that's just thematically sometimes. Too.
Right, exactly. Thematically connected.
Yeah.
And it's like they're trying to do a little bit of both. with this musical, where because of the way that they focus the end of the act, because of the way that we see like the terrible, horrible song with the lights that we'll talk about in a minute, these focusing moments to look at this ostensibly secondary couple that should just be juxtaposed to the main couple. Instead, we're like giving them so much focus that we're like, oh, we actually have 4 leads. And it's like you try to
full love stories,
right?
Yes.
And you try to fit in a mini plot into what is by its very nature an arch plot. It is Orpheus and Eurydice. There's only one climax. There's only one resolution. That's it. You can't have more than one.
Yeah.
Because it's not just like, oh, we're talking about a theme. No, there's a full story with a beginning and an end that repeats. You have to have that focus on it.
And it might have even been interesting for them to really make it about Hades and Persephone, like
That would have been
always set
clever.
it in hell, and then
you have them come
find
through
out
incidentally?
Orpheus- yeah.
That would have been really
incidentally,
interesting.
Very
And
interesting.
then, they leave because the audience
Very, very
knows what's
wicked.
going to happen
Right.
to them.
We don't
We'll
know
wikify it.
the,
We're
like-
just
we're
like Colin
we're-
said, not knowing Hades and Persephone's story so much. What
I
a more
didn't know-
interesting tack that would have been.
Yeah. Yes.
That or Orpheus
Letting
and
them
Eurydice
go,
are
having
the
it happen off.
the
We know
incidental.
what's happening. We
Yeah.
know already.
Yeah.
I think that would have been very interesting.
That's the book I should write. That would be great. Oh my God. What a good
Speaking
idea.
of Hades and Persephone,
Yes.
Joe, would you give us a recount of your favorite song in the show?
The worst lighting moment in Broadway history.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you both didn't. Nobody believes me.
Oh, I didn't believe you.
Nobody
Well,
believes
we didn't
me.
believe you until it happened.
Yes.
Because we even thought that we encountered it in Act 1, and Colin's
Yes, there
like,
was
I
like,
think this is the song he was talking about. I was like, I don't mind it so much. I was like, yeah, I don't think it was that problem. It wasn't the song,
So
obviously.
there's this duet in the second act, and it's when basically, isn't it like Hades and Persephone are reconciling and like
They're arguing.
but it's a kind of like the argument that leads to them
Yeah.
like
It's
realizing
their-
they both still love each other and like
It's their big
agreeing to work
climax.
on their relationship.
To be honest, it was hard to pay attention to the content.
Yeah.
So then, every time, and I mean every time, that
He's not joking.
Hades-
I mean, like, and I thought he was, and
did
he's
too.
not.
Yeah, every time that Hades speaks, the lighting goes warm red, like red,
Literally
like
bright,
orange,
like
yeah,
prime
yeah.
color red.
And then Persephone sings, and the red fades out rather quickly, and up fades blue to represent Persephone. And they're standing on different sides of the stage, right? So one stage right, one stage left, and it goes red, blue, red, blue. Red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, purple, and it's
Really?
It's so
it's so on the nose with this lighting to be like, okay, they're arguing, and then when they come together, then it's purple because red and blue makes purple, and it was just, I literally laughed in the theater.
We both were like, oh my God,
Oh, it
what is
was-
happening? And I don't know what the song was about because I wasn't paying
I
attention
was
to
so
it.
distracted. Again,
So
another one of those
distracted.
moments that pulls me out when I
Yeah.
should be pulled in.
Yes.
I should be on the
The
edge of my
elements
seat
shouldn't be
listening
doing
to their
that.
love story.
They could have
Absolutely.
just cut it. That whole
The
song
whole song
was
I mean,
I
it
didn't
goes
need
with
it
what we
at
were
all.
talking about. That love story is kind of like too much. The lighting is that choice just didn't even. I'm like,
Who was the lighting designer? Who thought that was a good idea?
I don't know,
I could do a
15-year-old
better
I
lighting
I know,
design.
it felt like it was outside of even the rest of the show, despite the rest of the show's troubles with lighting design. This even felt
this
like,
was egregious.
yeah, like somebody died and somebody else was like, I guess I gotta program something.
They ran out of money and somebody just went red, blue, red, blue, red, blue.
Yeah. I was like, what is happening?
I'm also like, why
And it-
is
and it was so
Hades
fast.
red
It wasn't
and
a s-
Persephone blue?
Yeah.
What, wouldn't she be green? Because she's like,
But even if it's warm, cool, like she's spring and he's winter. Even though
Right.
he's hell, I get like I think that's probably why he's red because he's
He's in like a
hell.
mine or something.
And it faded
But like
so
he's the cold
quickly,
one and
too.
she's the warm one. I don't know. There's like it really didn't make
yeah.
any sense to me.
And it would
neither
be
of
one
them
thing
was-
if it faded slowly so you almost didn't notice,
didn't
but it
notice
was
it.
like,
It was really like,
subtle.
it was
for
so
sure.
quick.
yeah. I mean, I would have been happier, of course, if it had been subtle, but they also would have needed to have set that up earlier. It would have had to have been a setup payoff where you have this sense of like their influence on the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Like and so then light follows the light them is almost following or emanates them. Right. From them.
Right.
I
that it's
think
like
I
a
had that
representation of
problem.
their power, but instead it was just like, you're just flipping a light switch. What is
literally,
this?
Like, and I found that problem not just with lighting, but a lot of things from like a lot of things that happen in the second act. I'm like, you didn't set that up in the first act. It was like at one point Hades was trying to like tell people what to do. I'm like, you didn't once ever command anyone to do anything that I'm like, now like I should I expect that people are listening to you?
Yeah.
Like
right.
why would I think that was, this doesn't mean anything. He's just now like, don't do that. And I'm like, yeah, well, they're not listening because you've never told them to do anything before.
Yeah.
What
or
is
even
this? What's
even just
happening?
the people in Tartarus down there, and they're like, oh, Orpheus will lead us out. And I was like, wait, he's going to do what? Why are they're going to, that's his job? He's supposed to lead everybody out? What is this?
Yeah, that was confusing. Like the ensemble just like got involved in the last like, we'll come too and we'll follow you. And I'm like, I guess I don't know the myth well enough to know if like that is part of it. I have no idea.
I don't think so.
I don't remember it, and it's not in any other version I've seen.
Yeah.
But it was like, it came kind of out of nowhere, and I think I get why it was happening. I feel like it was like there, I guess my interpretation of, you know, like you said, Hades building the wall. It's like the way people's like interpersonal relationships are happening, they affect the world around them. Like Hades trying to keep Persephone in was like enslaving a whole town.
When I wonder, like, if that was also because in the end, he talks about I can't let them go because I'll look weak. Mm-hmm. So that was like trying to set up that he is the like king of hell, right? That he has all these minions and souls that he has to.
How is that being set up at the end of the story?
Well, I mean, I agree,
and maybe that's because
Yes.
the supposition that everybody already knows who Hades is, and that's probably a big mistake
I
that
am
a lot of people
and we
do.
also meet both of them on Earth
We
for
do.
the first time in the first act. We don't meet them in hell, where we could have met them. And we could have
I guess
seen
I
the
assumed they were in
underworld.
hell.
Yeah, I guess I
Well,
did too, and that's
they're
part
up
of
on that balcony
they're up on that balcony,
watching
and that's what I'm talking about when I'm
I was
like,
like,
they're
are
mixing
they-
things together where
I
with
was
the lighting
like,
and
maybe
the
they're
set.
Mount Olympus where gods hang out. Like it's confusing. The staging,
because then
the tech
anytime
gets
that they do
confusing.
go to hell, like they either use that door and then they have a different lighting setup behind that door to show that you're in this like steampunk hell version. So in the beginning, when we meet Hades and Persephone, it seems like they're on Earth and he's saying,
That's fair, yeah,
and he's
'cause it's
saying,
unclear.
okay, it's your time to be on Earth, so I'm seeing you off.
Right.
Where I think if we would have met them maybe in hell to start seeing that landscape,
was that
seeing
clear.
him like taking those workers and then they go up onto Earth and he's like, okay, here's your 6 months. And then we meet Orpheus and
Because I
And,
think
you know-
the one tech moment that really worked for me was like they had set up like that slow
door.
closing door.
Oh
Yes.
my
That was
God.
beautiful.
which on the Broadway production it sinks.
That's what, yeah.
Wow.
Remember you telling me that, which would have also been cool. But just just the setup. I thought it was like very effective every time they did it. And of course, like that's like when he turned around, he was like barely even around, like completely, and the door was already moving, and that like it's like just like it did send like a little shockwave to me because they did set it up. It was exciting.
Yeah.
It was like it's so simple. I feel like those things are like can be so simple. You're just like, that's the door that goes to hell.
I was just so pulled out of it by all of the other lighting choices that I couldn't get excited about that at the end.
And that makes
like
sense,
I had checked once the red blue happened.
Oh my
I was
God.
checked out.
That
I was
was
like,
horrible.
this show could end. I'm ready.
I mean, and because I was kind of like primed and
You
ready
were
for
waiting,
it,
yeah.
I think I not forgave
I was
it because
surprised.
I was like,
I was
could
still
be cut
surprised,
right out.
despite you having told us about it. I didn't believe it was like that.
yeah.
No,
Not
it
that I
was-
didn't believe you,
No,
but
no,
I
no,
didn't
but-
believe it was like that.
Yeah, it was.
I couldn't have even imagined it. Weirdly,
Yeah, I mean, I even went to Colin. I was like, "Did you think I was being hyperbolic?" And you're like,
did.
"A
Yes.
little."
Absolutely,
Yeah.
I did.
yeah.
Yeah. Which not like I don't think you were intentionally being
No. But
hyperbolic.
people are hyperbolic when they speak in general. I mean, it happens,
I
right?
mean,
But
I'm sure we've talked in this pod, like making some other things seem more like other people wouldn't maybe notice this. That I think almost anyone would notice.
Oh my God. I
talked to it about people and they're like, no, that doesn't happen.
I was like, oh my God.
And I was like, I'm
That's
pretty
wild.
no, it does.
100%.
And they're like, well, I think I saw it on Broadway and it didn't happen there. I'm
I
like,
did
well,
hear
I
that
don't.
it like potentially.
But
that it
that's
didn't
so
happen
weird.
on Broadway.
Why would the lighting design? Because the lighting design
I
is
don't
usually
know.
licensed with the show, so it doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense that the lighting
Maybe
design
they
for a
did something
touring
in
production
the-
would be different.
I don't know. Maybe there's something in the theater was like very specific to that theater, and they're like,
So
we
they
can't
had to
do
make a
that, so we're just
choice.
gonna do
They
red
had to
light,
make
blue
a
light,
choice.
red light, blue
but
light.
you saw it literally years later when it
Later.
came
Yes.
back on tour
When it
again.
Yes.
absolutely changed.
So this is the second leg of the tour,
Right.
and they're still doing that same lighting design.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's something.
It's not like theater specific. It's or
It
at the
might be
very
tour
least it's tour
specific.
specific. But
But still, it seems odd to make a different lighting cue.
That's so
I've never
weird.
seen that because I've seen shows on Broadway that have then toured.
yeah,
Even I saw Once on this Island in the Round in New York, and then I saw it here. And even
Did you
though
see both?
it was proscenium instead of being in the round, but the lighting cues were the same.
yeah.
And they had to fully rework that show. So
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
To me, I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense for it to have been changed,
Yeah.
and maybe people did miss it. So
Well, they
Who
should
is a
change it
mystery?
again.
please
I
write
have-
to us.
anyone
write
from
to us.
Hadestown
Yeah, right.
Hadestown
Let
is
us know.
watching.
What do you think?
Let us know.
I have one more thing
Oh,
too,
gosh.
and this speaks to like meeting Hades and Persephone.
The first time?
The first time.
Okay.
And just kind of the usefulness of their usefulness and where the focus of this story is supposed to be. The musical is called Hadestown.
Mm-hmm.
That
We don't
gonna bring that
get
up.
to Hadestown basically until Act 2.
yeah, end of
It's
Act
not
one.
about
I mean, it happens a couple
Hadestown.
times in Act.
Yeah, well,
One.
we see it's like that's the
We end
draw.
Act
Like
one in
we
Hades.
we
So
That's
end
why I think
right.
if we
started there, if it was about
makes
Hades and
sense.
Persephone, and like you flip that where it's you have them be the primary couple, and then you have Orpheus and Eurydice as the secondary couple, we might have
interesting.
something that is a little more cohesive. It's about Hadestown,
And it's also
And what-
actually a twist. It's actually a twist in the story.
Yeah,
and
I
and
agree.
Hades
That would be
is
cool.
it's what happens to Hadestown when Hades is trying to take control of everything. Like
Yeah.
what an interesting story that is.
Right. That part felt like an afterthought.
And he's trying
Yeah.
to build up this town and build up these walls to protect him from losing Persephone, right? Because he's holding on so tightly to her because he's afraid to let go.
And it just got
But when
short
he does
shrift.
let go, that's when their love can truly form, right? That's
Right.
essentially kind of what some of those elements we're talking about. But they
which
just
is
didn't.
great. Is that the story of the musical?
I think it should be.
I think
Maybe
it
it
could
should
be.
It could be.
And I don't think it is.
No.
So if you want to fund our version of Hades,
And maybe I
Oh my
will write that
goodness.
book. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
That would be fun because that's interesting. It becomes
interesting.
like a bit of a tragedy on the other side where it's Hades and Persephone are going to be stuck in that cycle forever because
Yeah.
they're gods. So that's already a tragedy. They're stuck in their own version of fate, just like humans are. But also the tragedy of not being able to actually let Eurydice go. He can't just let her go. He has to make this deal. He's like, well, I can't just like let
and
her walk
similar,
out of
Hades
here.
can't let Persephone go. But
Right.
then he realizes that he has to in order for her to come back.
Right. And so
Yeah. There's some great, beautiful parallels and some
Yeah.
great, it's a good idea.
Yeah,
to
there's a lot
use
of
those
really
stories
interesting
to
ideas in
parallel
there.
It
each
just
other.
to me it just didn't feel finished. It felt like this was a show that would go into being workshopped.
They really wanted
Like
it
this
to be.
was the
I'm curious
preview,
about the
and then it
workshop
needed like
version.
Yeah.
6 weeks to be workshopped and reworked, and
well,
then
it's
to
like
come back.
they really wanted it to be an Orpheus myth,
Yeah.
and they missed what the actual story was.
Yeah,
They were just off
It
the
does
target.
feel like two stories. Like,
Yeah.
like she wrote kind of two stories, which like honestly, as a folk musical, could have also worked in
Yeah.
a cool way.
I think it could have also worked if all these other elements that we have talked
Yeah.
about were also done
That's true.
effectively,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
they weren't.
Right. And that's a big thing because maybe I wouldn't have minded any of it if, again, they didn't have this long intermission, if they didn't have these like unnecessary songs, if they didn't
I think-
split the focus so much and really just like drove to the end. That would have
a
maybe
good
fixed all of it.
90-minute show.
Yeah.
Cut out like some of the fat.
And that really could have maybe just
Different lighting designer, different costume
made me feel better
designer.
about all of it.
Just someone to come in and edit, like just
Yeah.
come in and edit. Like
Yeah.
the director should have come in and been like, nope,
Yeah.
tone it down or
Yeah.
tone it up.
Yeah.
Whatever. But
Because
like,
there's so much that's
they needed an editor.
potential in
essentially.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
I think maybe people were too close to it.
Oh,
It
for
seems
sure.
like one of those
You
times where
always- you
someone's too close and they can't critique it anymore
Yeah.
because they've been
Absolutely.
face first in it.
And even hearing Anaya speak about it at the concert, she talked about Hadestown, and like it was like a 10-year process.
Yeah.
They were
It's
a
like,
long
It was
process.
long, and they were like, eventually you do have to like just kind of like cut and print
Yeah.
and make it happen
Yes.
because we've been looking at this for so
Or you
long.
have to bring somebody else in and just say, "Hey, watch
Fix
this
it."
and
Yeah.
tell me what you think as an outsider."
and really,
I mean, I
really
did
can't be
some-
precious.
In college, we had part of my program. They had a new musical workshop every year, and they brought in playwrights from New York, essentially, that are workshopping musicals that hopefully end up going somewhere. I don't think none of the ones I ended up workshopping ended up going to Broadway, but the process, that was just like this was like a workshop because it's a program that I think other colleges do that allows playwrights to like use this as an educational opportunity. So it's kind of like I'm sure cheaper for the playwrights. They might even get paid to do this because it's educational to get a workshop in this educational setting. And there is, I mean, there were days where the composer would be like, okay, that song doesn't work. We're going to cut it. I'll write a new song tonight and you'll sing it tomorrow.
But you just have
And
to with
even, like, the-
everything. Like I do some
you do. You have
like
to.
freelance graphic design and website design, and I'm always sending it to people that don't have context to be like, what doesn't make sense to you? Because
Yeah.
if you as a first timer looking at this are confused, then other people are.
Yeah.
And I felt
Yes.
like with that show they needed to say like,
someone
someone who knows nothing about this, come watch and just give me your
need to.
opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm sure they had lots of people, but like eventually
I'm
it's
not.
They
just,
didn't have me. They didn't have Joe. That's true. Hire us.
But that's usually they have a lot of previews too.
listen to our podcast
It is a
and
long
hire us.
process, and just somewhere along the line, people miss stuff, and I think
Yeah.
it does end up being like a money thing where they're like,
Yeah.
okay, we've gotten this far, it's good.
We just
enough,
have to
let's
do
go."
it. Yeah, 'cause
But you're
eventually
it's
you do,
just
you have to just-
And I'm sure they've made their
They should just talk to us
returns
and
on
make their
it.
space.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's a first
yeah.
musical too, where it's like
And that is the thing. I think sometimes because we see a lot of theater, we are almost spoiled.
Yeah.
Because it's almost to our detriment sometimes because we go and see a show
Oh,
like that and we're
absolutely.
able to pinpoint what didn't work because we've seen so many shows that do work.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that this might be their first, second, third show.
Absolutely.
Or they see Broadway, I don't know, once every 5 years.
Yeah.
So to them, it's magic and everything's
Always.
great.
And it is. There's certainly magical
Yeah, there
elements.
is.
There are
things
Music
to
is
enjoy,
fun.
for sure.
There's really
I
exciting
mean, I still
moments.
listen to the soundtrack. I love the
Soundtrack is great.
soundtrack.
I mean, every time the Fates came on stage,
Oh my God.
I
like,
freaked
yes.
out.
Yeah.
Keep
I was
singing.
like, that's the show. Like I was like, I just want to see the Fates get on and sing because like everything about their costume design, their choreography, the use of instruments, the use of storytelling is so good
Yeah.
that I'm like, oh, you are so close to something. Like
Yeah.
Hermes, perfection.
Yeah, I
like
loved it.
I
No-
can
no notes.
imagine like Andre de Shields is stupid. He's so good. He's so good. And like, just like watching him, just like, cause there's like this patter and he's so like in rhythm, but so
Yeah.
natural and
Oh, it's
so
so good.
cool, but so like, so big and broad in the way he acts, but not in a way that feels fake at all. I don't understand. He's like superhuman. I think he's amazing. And the guy who did it, in the tour was also excellent as
was
well.
great. Yeah.
But that role,
I mean, all the actors
really awesome.
My issue was I have no issues with the actors. I thought the
Sure.
cast was
I do think like the vocals for some of like the folky stuff and the jazzy stuff, for me, that part of why I felt it was a little Disneyfied was like the people that we saw. Obviously, we saw different actors than you did. They felt a little bit like they were like they're musical theater people doing their best to do like to make their sound more folky and more jazzy, and they did great. They sounded great, but not as like, especially for like if you're really digging into folk stuff. I mean, Hades particularly, like that has to be like the old man who's just like kind of sitting there telling
Tom
a story.
Waits. We want Tom Waits to play Hades.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
It'd be interesting to compare playbills and see if any of the
It was
Hades especially. I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't.
Nathan Lee Graham was Hermes, and he's the
he's
Mugatu's assistant from Zoolander. So look that up.
So good.
It was so good.
He's so good in Zoolander, but he was great in
might have been
Hadestown.
the same one, honestly.
Wouldn't be surprised. Like again, this is a show that like I'm sure.
Oh wait, no, that's no.
I'm sure people do the tour.
Yeah,
but I mean,
I saw it over a year ago. So
Right,
that's
right.
true.
It was like right when we started being friends, right? Wasn't it?
Around then.
I think so.
Yeah.
Probably. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Time. Who knows? The pandemic really messed me up. I don't know what time is anymore. Or what my point was that I was talking about.
Just that there are things that worked really well.
Yeah, things that worked well.
Yeah. That people who don't
that are exciting.
often
The
go to
lighting
theater can get excited about.
It just left me wanting more.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, for sure.
That's fair. I think it definitely left me wanting more. And I love shows like that because there's so much to talk about and dig into. And so many things that worked really well while there were so many things that like really could be improved.
Yeah. It speaks also, I think, to how does one like innovate in an art form like that, where it's like, we know what works and then you deviated and it didn't work.
It's an art form.
But we have to be able to deviate to grow, right?
That we know super well.
Right.
In an art form that we know super, like, how are you deviating from all of these things? And in some ways they're like, I'm like, well, in this case, I'm like, the things that worked were the things we knew worked.
Right.
And some of the ways they were trying to innovate pulled us out.
Yeah.
That really, it feels like that.
And that's really,
But like we also know, I mean, when you get to like a psychological level, like we know how the human processes information.
Yeah.
And so throwing all this lighting at us when we really should be paying attention to this love song between these two people, right? We've got to know that there's nothing innovative about that because it's distracting.
No. Right.
So like,
So that's not
yes,
innovative.
there's ways to innovate. There's ways to twist the story, but there's also like limitations based on humans process information.
right.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. That's limits free us in the end. If we're actually taking those limits into account, we actually have more options.
Yeah. Because I would say even like the mixing of the paralleling of those two love stories is innovative. The pendulum lamps was innovative. Even
like that
mixing
before,
that
certainly.
real like true kind of folk and the structure of folk.
Yeah.
Because I've seen other folk musicals.
Yeah, I mean,
Spring Awakening is
folk
folky,
rock.
and that does it very well as well. But there's like,
Beautiful is folky.
yeah,
obviously.
and even just like the way that the lyrics, they were so like Americana, Southern Americana, where it's like the call answer thing happening.
I would almost love to dig for them
so
to dig in
interesting.
more into the New Orleans style in terms of like
I
sound
would have
design.
loved it.
Well, and again, it felt like a Disney
Disney
theme park, New Orleans.
No, because if it was Disney, it would have been more immersive.
Oh
Yeah, but I just mean in like.
But it would have been clean. It would have been
Flags.
clean.
It was Six
Maybe
Flags.
Six Flags.
Yeah,
very,
sure.
very like very theme parky, where it's
We're
just
gonna
like,
get sued by theme parks.
Oh no!
that's fine.
Bleep 'em out.
I mean, what are they going to get?
You have so much money. I have nothing. Yeah. So there are really innovative things about it, but again, like you say, like the things that really worked were the ones that we already knew worked.
That work. I mean, and of course, like it's not so simple. Obviously, like using those in context is not always like that simple because there are options.
Yes,
so like
of course.
they made good choices,
Sometimes
like the Fates.
The Fates were good choices.
Obviously, not all
Yeah.
good choices,
Yeah.
but they did.
they made good choices and they made choices.
To be fair, like in the end, if it's popular and appealing,
Who am I to tell you otherwise?
I mean, yeah, they won a bunch of
Generally-
Tonys. They made
Yeah.
their money back, and here we are 3 years later talking about this musical.
That's right.
So
I didn't not enjoy the full experience. I walked away
wouldn't
with
see it
pieces
again.
that I
don't know.
Don't know if I would.
I would not.
If they reproduced it, maybe.
If it
That's
like
the
was
thing,
a
we need to do it
totally,
again.
if it was a
Version.
totally new production,
Yes,
so like
I
a
think you're right.
revival.
I don't think
Yeah.
I'd see that production again.
Because I would really love to see the Fates again.
There's
Really
like
do wanna
Ellery
hear them.
Ward.
Oh, fun. That would be fun.
Who is
wow, that would be fun.
She does folk covers of Sondheim music.
Ellery, you hear us? Do it.
Yeah, if she was in it, then I'd go see it. Like if there was people that I liked in it because I like the music. Oh, those Fates are so freaking good.
Yeah, but I would much rather see it like at the Ravinia, where like those people
That
are
would
just
be-
performing it on stage, or
I mean,
like
I would love
just like
that.
see the CSO doing it, right? And they bring a few of the like. I don't want to see the production. I just want to hear this music.
Yes, I just know that like if the opportunity was there, sometimes I would just take
Yeah.
it because like I don't have a choice sometimes.
But like in 10 years, if it's revived, maybe somebody will fix these mistakes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's like close to, I think it is fixable.
Yeah,
In fact.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a good time to move on to superlatives.
Let's do it.
So we will start with our
Oscar-worthy moment.
Oscar-worthy moment.
Oscar-worthy.
So
I'll go first. I think mine is that the very end when
it starts at the beginning again.
it's before that, right before that,
Okay.
when Orpheus has looked at Eurydice, and she's hiding away. She's like getting dragged back down to the underworld in that big jaw mouth door thing.
Yeah.
And Hermes is looking upstage as
Oh, I forgot.
Orpheus is looking
That's
upstage.
excellent.
They're both looking upstage, and it's like it's a fantastic example of how you don't always have to sing down to the audience. It was so striking that everybody's looking upstage. You're looking at their backs, and it was beautiful that he's singing to Orpheus, and he's basically like repeating lines from earlier in the play because it's all cyclical. And he's like, "Yeah, here's what happened.
Ooh,
there
that
was
moment was-
there was a boy, and there was a hungry girl, and it
it's
was
a sad
so
story,
beautiful. It's a sad
and
story,
we
and he's
keep
just
telling it,
Oh my
and
god! And it's just like a
It's
cappella ish.
so moving.
It was so moving to have him just like look at Orpheus and be like, "I am the god Hermes that guides everyone through this, and I do it again and again and again." And I thought that was such a beautiful moment.
A great moment to remember. We don't have to look at an actor's face to have our own emotions.
That's true.
About a moment.
Yep.
And I thought it was so beautiful. And they were turned away, which is like, just parallel to the story. Just like it really hit for me. Do you have a Oscar-worthy moment?
My Oscar-worthy moment would probably be, the duet where it goes from red to blue. No, I think it's Wait for Me. I mean, that is the single best moment in that production. The way that the lighting comes down, and it's these like industrial gym lights, and the way that it moves and kind of becomes this character, the emotion in Orpheus's voice, and the way that the stage kind of breaks apart and the fog rolls through the cracks as the stage,
that was cool.
as like the literal gates of hell open up in a way, right?
Yeah.
That to me is like the only saving morsel. That scene is perfection in a very imperfect show.
Yeah. I mean, those lights in that they told a story they did so much with the lights in a very simple way, in a way that like I never like the ensemble, other than moving those lamps around, I don't think served much of a function that was clear to me.
But I was okay with that.
That's
During that moment,
And that's fine. Yeah.
I literally thought, okay, maybe the second act, the lighting design is going to be better. And then we had that duet. But that moment was great.
It was really great. Yeah. My Oscar moment was toward the beginning. I thought this was super cool. Orpheus was a songwriter, and he's trying to write this song. And Hermes is like, they're talking about Hades and Persephone, and Hermes is like, "Come on, kid," talking to Orpheus, "you tell the story." And then Orpheus goes and starts singing the story of Hades and Persephone. And so we see them kind of like play it out while he's singing it. And there's like, at some point, she's like, in the story, like she's in hell and then she comes to earth for the spring. But like in that, I realize I'm like, she's actually on earth now. It's actually happening now. And like, there was a moment I'm like, wait a minute. where are we? Like, have we moved into that story? Did Orpheus will her into, like, did he bring her out finally this time? Or are like both of these things happening over each other? And it was a moment where I'm like, it doesn't matter. Time doesn't mean anything.
Where
here.
are we on the timeline?
It doesn't actually matter.
Because they do it again too. He sings the same song to Hades later, and that's what he uses to convince. And so it's like, wait, are we in that version of the song too? Oh,
but that moment when like it was like an imperceptible moment where I'm like, oh, we're not just singing about the past. We're actually now, like, is he singing about the present or is he singing about the past? And now it's just like being paralleled by the present. Is it just a coincidence? Did he will it into existence? Because that's what's like the story. Like it was,
we're in the song.
It was like
maybe
kind of magical. And I'm like, wait a minute. Are we a step back? Is this like a story and a story and a story and a story? Like it just like, because it kind of is. It's, you know, Hermes telling a story about this and telling a story about that. Like there is like layers of story. And like, that was a moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, it's everything and nothing at the same time. And it was like, it was just a cool moment where I'm like, I got lost. And then I was like, it doesn't matter. That's so cool. It's like time doesn't make any difference. Like it both is now and is then and is forever. It was cool. So that was my Oscar moment.
Deep. Whoa. All right. Unearned moment.
Yes. An unearned moment.
I mean, we've all talked to death that one scene. How about we disqualify the the red, blue to purple.
Yeah.
I think I have my unearned is a lot of what the ensemble did. There's like, especially near the beginning when you have like all of the ensemble there and they're kind of acting as the chorus.
Yeah, they introduced them at the beginning.
They introduced them at the beginning, and it just felt unearned, especially in contrast to the Fates.
Yeah.
You have the Fates going around basically doing the same thing that they were doing.
Right.
And they were just like so much less effective. And so I think generally just kind of the chorus was unearned for me. We didn't get a use out of them.
It would have almost been better, maybe not, but like if they were like not the chorus, because they didn't really serve as a Greek chorus. I felt like the Fates did that. Like I was like, maybe they're the audience of this like live jazz show that we're seeing, and that's not really the choice they made. I'm like, maybe maybe that could have worked, but that's also sounds complicated. Maybe that wouldn't. I'm just, who knows? But yes,
yeah. Well, you guys.
I'm trying to think what I want to choose. Do you have a specific? I mean, you're obviously welcome to.
I mean, I won't choose that particular scene, but the lighting in general. I mean, there's another scene that I'm thinking of when the lighting is very warm and literally these like harsh white headlights get like flared up into the audience and literally like blind you. Yeah. And for what? Like, why am I now like in pain and squinting when I should be enjoying this story? So I think the lighting didn't tell the story. It distracted from it.
I agree. My unearned moment, I think just like generally the people of Hadestown, like that, it just felt really
throwaway.
It felt like let's just throw it in there. Because I don't quite know. I'm like, I think I know what you're doing with it, but it's not like the music is interesting. And I think I get why you wrote it musically and why it like fits thematically, but it's not set up at any point in the story to like really feel like, am I supposed to care about the people of hell before the moment they break out of their the cogs of the machine?
It's interesting because in a lot of the conversations that's coming up, and I'm kind of just piecing this together, it seems the chorus in general is throwaway, right?
Yeah,
like
I think so.
In
I think
Wait
so
for
too.
Me, you said you don't know why they're there. In Hell, you don't know why they're there.
I
When we
think Wait
first
for Me
meet them,
is-
we don't know why they're there. So they're there. They provide some additional power, right? Some additional vocals, but they don't actually intertwine into the story in a way. So
Yeah.
maybe
But
that's
they
the
do just a tiny bit at the end, which is more confusing.
Yeah, it makes it more confusing.
Because like I think you're right, they don't most of the time, and then all of a sudden they're like, "I'll come with you," and I'm like, "That's the first time you said anything."
yeah, that's the first time
Who
you've
are
been
you?
related to
Yeah.
anything that's
I don't
going
know
on
who
here.
you are.
So it's
Yeah.
like the chorus is the biggest unearned moment.
Yeah.
I that is essentially
That's my take on that. I think generally,
because I was like, that's part of why I'm like, when Hades is like trying to stop them from leaving, I'm like, you haven't interacted with them before. You like did the call and response thing. I think that was like cool that like the folk, like this like very classic folk structure
Like
of
work
this
song.
call and response
Yeah.
work song. Very interesting. And I think it was like, I thought that was interesting. It was weird as an Act 1 finale, and
Yeah.
it came out of nowhere. But like that concept is interesting, but not set up
Yeah.
in any sort of way. Any other superlatives that we want to? Best Fates moment.
oh my gosh, do I even remember them all? But I
know
do.
which
I
one
do
I
have
like
one.
the best.
Yeah, you go first.
Just like when Orpheus is like gonna go up, and they're like, okay, we're gonna go up, and they're just like, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my
I'm
gosh,
like,
that was mine.
oh,
It's
like,
the best. Oh my god.
oh, I'm like, because
I
I'm
vote
like,
for that too.
It was like, it was everything. It was like the feelings of the people around them, but also like the fates themselves trying to like, it's Orpheus at that point trying to like pull away from his fate. And so like they're like in opposition to the fates at that moment. So it makes sense for them to be that aggressive and to be that involved at that moment. But it didn't feel literal to me either. Like they were just like, like it also felt like in his own brain, that's what's going on. I thought it was like the use of the fates was awesome. Super cool. And like that moment, especially where they're like, they just like lean into, and they sounded sick.
so
They sounded
good.
so good.
Oh man, that has to be my moment too. That was going to be literally the one I said. But
I guess
it's
another
good.
cool, I mean, if you have it, do you have like, I was just gonna say like talking about lighting moments, another cool lighting moment. I did like their use of the lanterns, the three fates with the lanterns on the way up.
Oh yeah,
I thought that was like,
that was very
like
cool.
simple, but cool. Like they would disappear and
Yeah.
like, and it was ominous, and it was, I think the fates
You also
were,
saw the show much more recently than I have.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yes. So of course, like,
Yeah.
I just
I guess
wanted
we
to
could
talk
do
about the fates
favorite
more.
song.
okay,
Yeah,
if you want.
best song,
I mean, Wait for Me.
best song.
Wait for Me reprise.
That's what I was gonna say. Dang it,
yeah,
Fate
that
for Me
one's good too.
reprise. That was mine. I liked the reprise so much.
Or just the snippet that Hermes is singing a cappella. That's
Oh man,
so
that's also very good.
I mean, the Song of the Gods is beautiful.
Beautiful.
It's just like by itself, almost like no instruments. But
Yeah.
yeah, Wait for Me is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
is the
and
number.
they used that song well. The song of the God, like the way they used it multiple
They
times, which is
intertwine it so well into the musical.
yeah.
it like
Even just the like la da da da, you know.
Yeah.
I can't sing, so I won't.
but they do it. It's a nice device for
Yeah.
musical theater, but also it feels very folky the way they like reinterpret it and stretch it and
Yeah.
twist it, and it like it works in pretty much every context.
Yeah.
Again, there's a lot of like really cool things.
Yeah. I did want to do one more shout out. I forgot. To the trombonist. It's a trombonist's show. And I thought that was, I don't know why exactly. They did a lot of like solos, and the trombonist like stood up.
I mean,
And
that's very jazzy.
it is
right?
very jazzy.
New Orleans
Absolutely.
jazz.
It was very New
for
Orleans jazz. It was a
sure.
little bit outside of the show. So it was like you're doing something else now. So again, it wasn't
I wish it
quite
was
thought
more. I wish it would
through.
lean into.
Yeah.
And the orchestra was
more,
also
which it
on
felt like at the
stage, and
beginning.
then sometimes the fates would like interact with
Yes.
them.
So it was a little
sometimes they had-
confused. Like,
Sometimes
who
they
are
were like
they?
completely separate, and so that again.
I liked the use of the instruments for the fates,
Yes.
but it was confusing in kind of like
Yeah.
in the mix.
Are they
with them.
actors or are they not?
Right. But it is
Exactly.
interesting to have a
Confusing.
show that has, it's like, this is a show for a trombonist. It will feature trombone, and a show for a bass.
Yeah.
That's true.
Hades. There
was
are like
there
very
was a show
few.
for a
Yeah.
bass.
Yeah.
Very, very few of those these days.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like really, it's like that's for a bass.
But I mean, a trombone is
It's really cool.
it's
Yeah.
one of the only instruments that slides around.
Yeah.
That, like there's a lot of things you can do with that, which they do in jazz. There's like, I mean, it serves a lot of functions. I think a trombone is cool.
All right. We good?
I think
I think that settles it.
that's a wrap for Hadestown.
That is a wrap for Hadestown. Way down in
Hadestown.
Thank you so much for catching us on Then a Moment. I am Pavi, and remember, just don't look back.
And I am Colin, and remember, 3 women. I know what 3 is.
You showed
my
4
God.
for those of us.
3 women singing in harmony will always work.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
And I'm Joe, and remember that with lighting, sometimes less is more.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Then a Moment, a Pavitas production project, hosted by Colin Funk and Pavi Proczko. This podcast is produced by Chicago Podcast Studio. Our opening cartoon was created by Gloriu, and our theme song was composed by me, Pavi Proczko. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite listening platform. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Then a Moment Pod, all one word, for updates on new episodes and behind-the-scenes content. If you have any feedback, comments, concerns, or kudos, you can email us at thenamomentpod@gmail.com. Please rate and review us wherever you can. It would help us out a bunch. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.